Layla, we heard there in Andrew's report some of what happened last night. What are you hearing there at your end?
Indeed, yes, last night really was, as you saw in that package, one of the highest levels of violence we've seen here since the protests began. The first night of the protests in the country on October 17th was full of tear gas, full of fighting, as you saw last night. But since then, we've only really had small and isolated scuffles. Last night, that spread across Beirut. And it actually started earlier in the day because protesters said they wanted to take back parliament, go into parliament, which has been blocked off to them for the last 2 months by riot police and barriers. So they started trying to remove those barriers, and that's when the security forces came in extremely hard. And there were also supporters of the Shia parties, Amal and Hezbollah, who came in to fight with protesters as well. Protesters saying that the security forces, from their point of view, didn't really do much to push back those sectarian supporters and seemed to be focusing on stopping those protesters from getting into parliament. So we saw tear gas flying across the city. The air was heavy with it. You could really see it. It looked like smoke, people being kicked as well, and more than 40 people, as you heard, they're injured. Many of them taken to hospital, though, because so far what we've been mainly seeing is small injuries from people. They've been sent to Lebanese Red Cross vans and sent away, but the Lebanese Red Cross said more than half people injured last night had to actually be taken to hospital, and many are still there this morning. So quite an escalation in violence last night.
Now, those talks for forming a new government in deadlock, what can we expect next on those?
Well, this is one of the reasons why people are so angry, because it's nearly 2 months now since Prime Minister Saad Hariri resigned. The country has been under a caretaker government led by him. And a couple of times we have had suggestions that a new Prime Minister is going to be nominated. Now, in Lebanon, the Prime Minister has to be a Sunni, and all the other parties have to agree on that Prime Minister under the sectarian power sharing system here. And the problem is there isn't really anyone who is palatable to all the other parliamentary blocs other than Saad Hariri. So we had one person nominated a few weeks ago, and immediately he pulled out when it just became clear protesters took to the streets as soon as his name was nominated, Mohammed Safadi, because he was another billionaire businessman. People said, we don't want another elite man running this country, so he pulled out. And then just last week, there was another person who'd been nominated, Samir Khatib. Now, people thought he might work because he has no political history, so he really is a political novice. He's a businessman, and people thought maybe he would be acceptable as some sort of technocrat, which is what people are calling for. Once again, people were saying he's still an unpopular choice. And then last week, the head of the main Sunni authority in the country said that he wanted Saad Hariri to come back. So Mr. Khatib pulled his name out as well, which means that Saad Hariri, once again, despite saying he doesn't want to be Prime Minister of Lebanon anymore and can't bring the country together, seems to be once again the only choice. Many people saying actually they think his party is trying to play the system, eliminate other possible candidates so he can come back. So it's now looking like these presentations, which have been pushed repeatedly on Monday, will once again nominate Prime Minister Saad Hariri, what all the protesters don't want. And all these protests seem to have either been pointless or will continue again under this new government.
OK, Layla, good to speak to you. And you'll be following developments there in Beirut for us. Layla Molana.